How's it going, everybody? Welcome into the Skyline Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Hartman, joined as always by my good friend and co-host from the West Coast, Nick Normand. Nick, how are you doing today, man?
Doing great. I got to see some Steelers football yesterday, a preseason game, but being able to see some dudes in the black and yellow playing, it still doesn't feel like football season, but to see football being played and have there be some plays to be made, it's pretty fun. And so happy to be back at it. Feels like I feel ready for it. I have a roommate who's moving out right now and a new one moving in. So it's a kind of season of transitions for me. So I feel like I'm leaning into that where I'm like, new person in the space, football season coming, work changes shifting around. Like it feels like I'm ready for it, looking forward to it. And football is just a huge slice of that because I love some football in my life. How are you doing, Jack?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I agree with you. You know, we're full in preseason for the NFL, and of course, college is going on too, having scrimmages this week. So yeah, it's a good time. Fall is my favorite time of year for a whole host of reasons, and football is definitely one of them. So definitely feeling, even though it feels we're getting closer and closer, it feels like almost it's going taking longer and longer to get there. But really excited about it. And so we're going to be getting right into this. We were looking at the NFC today, the entirety of the NFC, going division by division, teams that we think are going to be playoff teams from each division, storylines, stuff like that. And so we got to get right into this because we've got a lot to pack into about an hour here. And so we're going to get right into the NFC East. Last year, Philadelphia, for the first time in like over 20 years, repeated as division champions last year. The showing, though, from the rest of the NFC East was poor, and they obviously also did not perform very well in the playoffs either. So, Nick, as we're going into the 2026 season, what are you looking out for in the NFC East?
So NFC East, good bit of turnover there with the head coach specifically for the Giants bringing in Harbaugh. I feel like the vibes there are really good. They obviously drafted very aggressively into the trenches. They got Arvell Reese and they got Maui Noah out of Miami, getting bigger, getting physical. I think it's still too early in the timeline for them, even though I like what they're doing. I just think that there are too many risks. The Giants are a pretty injury prone team last year with Scadaboo, with Dart, with Andrews, the left tackle. It just feels, or Andrew Thomas, the left tackle. It just feels like all, and Neighbors as well. It just feels like all of their important dudes are injury prone dudes. Commanders, I don't have them making the playoffs either. The two teams that I do have in this division making the playoffs, though, are Eagles and Cowboys. And the Eagles, like you said, repeated as champions last year. I don't have them repeating as champions again. I actually have the Cowboys winning this division, Eagles coming in second in the division. The Cowboys, I just view it like everybody else does in some ways. I'm sure you've heard this on tons of podcasts, talk shows. If their defense could just be average, this offense is so good that they'd be able to ascend as a team. And I believe that their defense can be average. I believe that the Josh Downs pick was good, that the trades they made, the D end out of the Packers and D Winters out of the 49ers, those are meaningful. The Marvion Overshone coming back. I believe that the edge rush core is going to be deeper than ever. Even without Michael Parsons there, I think that they're a deep edge rush group. And of course, Josh Downs, I think he's going to be defensive rookie of the year. I think he's going to have the most hype of any rookie this year just in the league as far as winning impact. I think that as a rookie, you could see him be a Pro Bowler, maybe even an all pro at the nickel position. But the Cowboys, I think their offense is just that explosive. The secret sauce in that offensive line, I think, is going to be quite good. Their head coach came on really well last season with Shoddy. I just really thought Schottenheimer showed out well. They seemed really professional as a team as the way they went about it, even with the defense being a disaster that year. I just think so highly of Dak. I think so highly of how these receivers are as far as like how high they are up in the receiver rankings. Both you and I ranked both of their lead receivers as top 10 receivers. I just think that this offense is a clear top three offense, and this defense can be solid. And I think that this team is going to have a ton of momentum coming out of last year. I think the Eagles kind of fell flat late in the season, but I think that their overwhelming level of talent took a bit of a step back. And the other main thing with the Eagles is, hey, whenever the offensive coordinator is good, they get a head coaching job. And whenever the offensive coordinator is not good, they get fired. There's no consistency with the OC position in Philadelphia. And I think that Sean Mannion coming in falls more on the weak side than he does on the strong side with OCs. And I think without AJ Brown, that could be a problem. With a weaker head coach, in my opinion, I just really struggle with thinking that this Eagles team could be better than last year, and they fell flat last year. So I'd be really worried. Lane Johnson, probably a swan song year for him. Worse weapons with no AJ Brown. Jalen Hurts, it feels like, isn't on the upswing anymore as a quarterback. I just don't see how the Eagles got better this year, but I do see how the Cowboys got better, and I think they can close the gap here.
Yeah, I have Dallas winning the division this year as well. I think that the additions that they made to the defense in the middle of last season and in the off season are the type of additions that could take this from being a bottom third defense in the NFL to a top third defense in the NFL. I really think that the guys that they added, I mean, they went and added, I mean, if Aaron Donald comes back, then that'll change. But in theory, the best defensive tackle in what is now the NFC because he's traded from the Jets and Quinnen Williams, that's massive. Caleb Downs, I think, is going to be really, really good and is going to be, like you said, he has the potential to be an all-pro as a rookie. Really, really good. I think in what they did, with the other ways that they drafted. I think they brought in really, really solid guys that are going to be able to contribute. Like you said, DeMarvion Overshown is coming back. That's a really, really big get back. I just really, really like what Dallas did with their defense. We already talked about their offense. Dak Prescott, we both had as a top 10 quarterback. George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, we both had as top 10 wide receivers. I think that like, and you mentioned it. Oh man, if Dallas just had mediocre defense or average defense, the offense is good enough. I think they're going to have above average defense, and I think because of that, I think also, it's not that we like to see when guys lose their job in the NFL, but they certainly upgraded it. Defensive coordinator with the firing of Matt Eberflus last year, right? So that's a big important aspect of this as well. Okay, so let's do a bold prediction for this division. Okay, so let me go first. Here's my bold prediction from this division. My bold prediction is that Philadelphia finishes in third place in the division. That the Giants surpass the Eagles now that they have a real established coach in that room. First time since Tom Coughlin. And with that, we will see Philadelphia with a new head coach and a new starting quarterback next season. That all of this it is just all falling apart, and we will see Nick Sirianni lose his job. We will see a new guy come in who is like, listen, we know what Jalen Hurts is. I mean, heck, everyone and their mother has seen the video going around that Philadelphia posted from training camp of him throwing a terrible interception over the field, just a couple days ago. And so my bold prediction, Philadelphia finishes in third. They only finish above Washington, and the Sirianni and Hurts are not the head coach and starting quarterback going into next season.
Mm-hmm. So you have the Eagles imploding. I have Washington imploding in this division. I think they're going to fire their head coach in Dan Quinn. I think that the injury issues with Jaden Daniels are too big of an issue. And I think that, to be honest, they're mismanaged from the top down as far as how they draft, how they go about building out the team. I think paying Odafe Owe $25 million a year is ridiculous. Sonny Styles, I think, slam dunk pick, but I think that anybody could make that pick with their eyes closed. And I think the other picks were fine at best. I just am really concerned about the health of Jaden Daniels. I think that Terry McLaurin probably has passed his prime and going downwards, even though I think he's quite good. He had injury issues last year, and then you're going to bank on Steph Diggs. I just think that the receiving core, the running back core, the tight end core, the offensive line, I have questions about all of it, along with health issues with your quarterback, along with a head coach that I don't know that he makes a winning impact, along with an offensive coordinator that I don't particularly like. It just feels like a lot more problems than anything else that could all line up.
Yeah, I mean, to keep in mind, I do have Washington finishing in 4th in the division this year. That said, Washington had the little blip of going to the NFC Championship game. Philadelphia won the Super Bowl 2 seasons ago. So, not that I don't think that Washington firing their head coach and tearing the whole thing down would be a big thing, but just the how drastic the fall has been for Philadelphia, I think is just really, really impactful. So you have Dallas and Philadelphia going to the playoffs this year. I just have Dallas as the division champ. Okay. Anything else that we want to talk about the NFC East before we move on?
No, nothing from me. I think we covered it. We are worried about some disasters in this division. Do you have the Giants making the playoffs or just finishing second, by the way? To be clear.
Not making the playoffs, just finishing second.
So just Dallas winning the division and making it and no one else. Gotcha.
Yes. I think we will start to see the return to the NFC least for this division. There's been a couple years here recently that they've gotten two in, whether it's been Philadelphia winning and Dallas as a wild card or vice versa. And then there was the year with Washington. I think we're going to be back to 10-7 division champ, and everyone else has losing record probably. That's the way I see it happening this year.
Got you. Makes sense.
All right, moving on to the NFC North. Last year, the NFC North was really turned on its head compared to the years prior. Chicago won the division, Green Bay in second, Minnesota in third, and Detroit in fourth place in that division. Nick, what are you intrigued by? What are sort of the big storylines for this division to you?
So for me, looking at this division, I feel like the big thing right now is Caleb Williams going to take another step? Because rookie to second year Caleb Williams, it feels like took a nice step, but feels like the consistency wasn't there. But with the new head coach, with the new offensive system, with a better O-line, that things were going in the right direction. But it didn't really feel like to me that Caleb Williams, the player, was that different. Like, I feel like you just saw the clutch big throws, like special aspects more. But even as a rookie, you saw some of the special aspects either way. But I think this year, if he is able to clean up the pre-snap and post-snap stuff and then hit the layups, I think that if he improves this year, more than last year, it felt like the team and the offense improved. If this year he can improve, I think you would see an offense that could be insanely high as far as their ceiling. Even though they traded away DJ Moore, even though it feels like last year that it was pretty fluky, it feels like that's one of the big storylines to me. Micah Parsons coming back after an ACL tear, pretty interesting as well. Can Jordan Love take another step? Just like it feels like every year I'm predicting him to, because I feel like he's good, but there's that sort of question. And then Kyler Murray and the Vikings. I just think that the Vikings felt good with Sam Darnold, but felt like, oh, we need J.J. McCarthy to like be that dude, and Sam Darnold's not that dude. And then Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl, and J.J. McCarthy's a disaster. And now Kyler Murray's named the starter. And is Kyler Murray going to be able to elevate them, or is he even going to be able to pilot the ship? Because I feel like this ship's pretty good, but still has some holes where I think the defense got weakened. They lost some personnel. But I'm also worried that Kyler Murray, it feels like, can make plays, but I'm worried about the piloting the ship. I still remember that playoff game against the Rams when he looked like a disaster, where like he looks short behind that offensive line because he is, but that the walls just closed in on him. I'm worried that teams are going to be able to exploit that walls closing in and him not be able to operate the system. And then he kind of fizzles late in the year, which it feels like is always the question. But with the new team, with the most talent he's ever had in his career, can Kyler Murray kind of elevate this Vikings team to the playoffs? That's kind of where my questions are at. Lots of quarterback questions in this division.
Yeah, I think one of the main storylines about the NFC North this year is I think the NFC North is the second best division in the NFC. I mean, the NFC West, it's far and away like it's not a conversation. I just think the NFC East and the NFC South are so on the struggle bus right now. But because the NFC North plays the NFC South and the AFC East, I think we're going to see teams that are good but not great and have records that look great. And I say that because it would not surprise me if all of these teams went 3-1 or better against the NFC South. It would not surprise me if all of these teams go 2-2 or better against the AFC East, because again, you've got Jets and you've got Dolphins, and some of these teams, would be able to compete with New England and Buffalo. I don't think that any of these teams are going to sweep that division, because one, it's football and stuff happens, and also because I think both New England and Buffalo are better than all of these teams. But still, if that's the case, that's 5 wins right there. That is, can account for half to from a third to a half of a team's wins that don't have substance. You know what I mean? And I think it's different than a couple of years ago when Detroit went 15-2, and it's like, oh well, they played the AFC South, and it's like, yeah, and all but one of those games they put up 50 points.
It was silly that year for sure.
Right. It's not going to look like that, even though win-loss wise, it may, I mean, it won't be that, but there will be a lot of wins. So it would not surprise me if we see the winner of this division be a 12 or 13 win team that loses in as early as the wild card, but definitely the division, because they have an overinflated record because of the way the schedule looks. So that's something that I'm really going to be interested in watching for. Is not all wins are created equal, and if we're seeing Chicago, for example, oh, they went 12-5, and it's like, yeah, and they beat Tampa Bay by a field goal at the end, and they beat the Jets by a touchdown. Okay, well, how elite is this team really? Is the record an accurate representation of how competitive this team really is? Which I think is something that, I mean, it's not just unique to this division, but the exact set of circumstances with their other division opponents this year, I think could be really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the division last year was so good. It felt like everybody was at least a good team. And I believe the lowest win team had 9 wins in Detroit. Detroit was technically 4th. But I don't think that any of them has a floor below 7 wins. I don't see anyone in this division getting down in the 5-6 win range.
Right.
But I think that all of them have holes is my thing, where it's do I think I see any of these teams reaching the apex of what I think the NFC West is going to look like? No. But I do think they're maybe a half to a whole step behind that, where I feel like the NFC West is going to be able to feed off of 2 games against the Cardinals. And I don't think any of these teams are going to be able to have walkover games within the division like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, before we get to the NFC West, who do you have as your champion of this division this year?
I do have the Bears. I just think that they were able to put together a lot of wins this year that felt lucky. But the thing is, I think that this is the sort of team that is going to add more substance because they are able to do so with the level of talent and coaching that they have. I think that the offensive line's still good, even though they lost their center due to retirement. They've drafted well in that department in the past. I think that Caleb Williams has the flash to be able to be clutch, but I think that he's going to add more substance being able to hit the layups. I think being in the second year in Ben Johnson's system, he's going to look even better. I was really worried last year with how many of the DBs got injured. And if the DBs are healthy, I think you're going to be able to get stops with this secondary. I would think that the secondary could actually be one of the like top 5, top 10-ish secondaries in the entire league. I think that highly of like Jalen Johnson and them. But personally, getting stops with the defense and having an offense that's explosive that I think can take a big step, that to me looks like a division champion. And I really like what the Bears were able to put together last year, even though there was some flash more than substance. Along with the Bears, who I have taken a step, I also have the Detroit Lions making the playoffs. I have them as my 6th seed, which Detroit has been better than this in the past. They've won this division before. They've had 15-plus wins, like you've said before in a season, which is unbelievable. I'm concerned about the DBs, specifically the safeties in Kirby Joseph, in Branch. They had some major injuries happen last year, and it feels like they always have injuries, but I am hopeful that they can be healthy this year. I liked how they drafted and added in with Cade Mays and Miller on the offensive line. I really liked those additions. If they can be stable on the defense and on the offensive line, I like the addition they had at offensive coordinator too. It feels like they have the star power to elevate while also trying to supplement where the floor dropped out these last couple of years with the run defense from the secondary, where you could just have guys running scot-free because the safeties wouldn't be filling the proper hole, because you'd have Aiden Hutchinson tear his knee up, and then you have no edge rushing pressure, and you have to blitz every single time. I am hopeful that their floor can be raised by not having to deal with chaos like that, but I still think that they have a little more concern than I have about Chicago. With Chicago, I question, is this 100% sustainable? But I'm not like, wow, their defense completely could fall apart because of injuries. Oh, their offensive line's breaking in a ton of new dudes. I just feel like having Ben Johnson at head coach, being able to keep the same offense, provides a floor that, because Ben Johnson left Detroit doesn't quite have. But I still think the star power and head coaching and culture that Detroit has elevates them over the concerns I have with a Micah Parsons-less Green Bay or with a Kyler Murray Vikings team. And that's why I have them in the Detroit Lions over those teams. But that's why I'm a little more worried about them than I am about the Chicago Bears.
Gotcha. I have Detroit winning this division. I have Green Bay making the playoffs as a wild card. I do not have Chicago making the playoffs. And I don't have Chicago making the playoffs for a few reasons. One, I think they were more than just a little lucky last year. I think it'll be very, very hard for them to repeat the number of takeaways that they had, the number of turnovers that they forced last year. That is not something that is just like, oh, yeah, we're really good at this and we do this all the time. Also, I still feel like Caleb Williams had opportunities to do the flashy things, and his highlight reels, again, were crazy last year. But the Ben Johnson offense is about doing the simple things well, and he still did not complete, like, I think he was, 58% around there in pass completions last year. So, like, I feel like and that's not me saying that he can't improve there. I think he can improve there. I think if he does take that next step, which you talked about Chicago elevating their floor, I think if Caleb Williams can elevate his floor, then the whole team's floor will be elevated. And if he can do that this year, then I think that Chicago absolutely can repeat as champs. But at the same time, it's going to be a lot harder for them to do that playing a first place schedule instead of a fourth place schedule like they did the year prior. Which is a vast difference that they'll have to have as they're undertaking this year. I think some of the injury concerns with Detroit and the new offensive coordinator thing with Detroit that were definitely concerns going into last year. I think they have a much easier road to work through those issues because they have a much simpler on ramp. They have an early bye with week 6. Their first 5 games are New Orleans at home, at Buffalo, the Jets at home, Carolina on the road, Arizona on the road. And so I think that that is a very favorable schedule for them to work through that. I don't think it would be crazy to think that they're 4-1 going into their bye week, and that's when they get Cade Mays back from his injury. They get, Kirby Joseph off the pup list and maybe Brian Branch off the pup list as well. Then going into not the back half, really the back 2/3 of their schedule, but still they've had time to adjust and get used to. We have some new personnel, we have some new guys against what, in my opinion, is inferior opponents, while also having a game against Buffalo, against an elite opponent, to also be able to tell the deficiencies instead of only easy teams. So then it's like, oh no, actually we're really good and we haven't had to adjust and like, stuff like that. So I have Detroit winning the division. I have Green Bay in second place in this division. I have Minnesota coming in last at 8-9. Like you said, I don't think that a team is going to have worse than 7 wins out of this division, and some team does need to come in last. And despite how great of a Minnesota defense they have, I think that I think that Kyler Murray will be better than JJ McCarthy was last year, but also we've seen the Kyler Murray thing before, and it's just very hit or miss. And so that sort of averages out to around a 500 record, and so that's where I have them there. Now, let's get into our bold predictions out of this division. And mine, I think, is very bold. Um, I think that after this year, Matt LaFleur gets the Sean McDermott treatment and gets fired. And the reason that I say that, I wouldn't have said it, but Sean McDermott just got fired. And if you look at Green Bay's success under Matt LaFleur in his first 2 seasons, they went 13-3, they went 13-3, they made the conference championship. Never won it, never got over the hump, but they made it. Next year they went 13-4, but they lost in the divisional. Year after that was Rodgers' last year. They went 8-9. They didn't make the playoffs. Then, since Jordan Love has officially become the guy, they have lost in the division, lost in the divisional round, and then lost in the wild card the next 2 seasons. And so I think that in a league that is what have you done for me lately, there's a strong chance that we see Green Bay go 10-7, 11-6, be a wild card team, like in the 6th spot, because whoever comes in second place in the NFC West is going to get the luxury of going to the NFC South champion, likely. They have to play whoever it is, whether it's the winner of, whether it's Detroit or Chicago, or maybe that's Dallas, whoever it is that then they have to face. They lose that game, and Green Bay is finally like, you know what? We still aren't getting over the hump. We still aren't getting over the hump. We went and got Micah Parsons. We still aren't getting over the hump. And Green Bay decides, because this was talked about a little bit last year when they started to have their slide. It was like, whoa, what about Matt LaFleur? Is this really which is, again, ESPN pundits need something to talk about. But I think that there's a chance that we see, again, a very similar situation with what the Bills did with Sean McDermott, despite having a smaller sample size, but also less success, I feel like, in the recent seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I hear you. I could see that regarding Matt LaFleur and the Packers. I just don't view the Packers as like that much turnover at their head. Like, they seem very Steelersy without an owner. The Steelers have an owner. The Packers don't have an owner like that. I just don't feel like they'd turn over at their head coach when it feels like their head coach probably isn't the issue. He's not quite a game changer like the top 3 to 5 head coaches in the league, but I don't think he's the problem there. Like, to me, the lack of talent in some regards is more of an issue where, like, edge rusher outside of Micah Parsons, the DBs, the defensive coordinator slot. I think that they got a good defensive coordinator this year, actually, and being able to hire that position well, I think, does matter. But I'm just really worried about the Micah Parsons injury because of how big of a load he bears and how explosive he is. Tearing up your knees, a real concern for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Moving on to my bold prediction, though, I'm obviously high on the Bears. I have them winning this division. I'm so high on the Bears. My prediction is that Caleb Williams leads the league in pass touchdowns. I think that last year we had Matt Stafford lead the league in pass touchdowns, and that was a function of Devontae Adams' 1 yard touchdown, slot fades, slants, that kind of thing. But I think that when you're looking at a league that Mahomes is coming off of a knee injury, Lamar Jackson is coming off of an injury plagued season and some inconsistency, aging happening. Justin Herbert should be pretty good, but I'm worried about his weapons. Lad McConkey's good, but besides that, doesn't really have a variety of receiving threats. Gadsden's good as well. But I think that the run game is going to be really good this year. I look at Caleb Williams as having the arm and the talent himself, the receivers between Loveland and Komet and Rome Odunze, and on top of that, Luther Burden. I just think that the system plus the talent plus him, the player, you're going to see 30 plus touchdowns this year. You're going to see maybe 35 or 40 plus touchdowns this year. I'm that high as far as the totals that he's going to be able to put up. The explosive plays is 100% there in this offense. I think that Caleb Williams could have that sort of year.
All right. Interesting. We I think basically the easy way to put it is you are optimistic about Caleb Williams. I am pessimistic about Caleb Williams. And then we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. All right. Moving on to the NFC West. The NFC West was awesome last year. Obviously, Seattle is our reigning Super Bowl champions. They did it with in part by having 3 absolute bangers of games against the Los Angeles Rams, losing 1, winning 2. And on top of that, what was forgotten about for the most part was that San Francisco somehow managed to have a really, really great season in their own right, winning 13 games, I think, last year.
They won a playoff game. I know that.
Well, they won a playoff game, but I think in the regular season they went 13-4.
Maybe 12. Let me check.
Okay, either 12-5 or 13-4, somewhere like that. Again, yeah, won a playoff game. Was just a really surprising, 3-horse race. When you picture the meme of the dragons that are like these fierce looking dragons, and they're all looking at the doofus looking dragon, that unfortunately is the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah. So going into this season, obviously there's a lot of hype. Again, Seattle is the defending Super Bowl champion, but at the same time, everyone has pretty much crowned the Los Angeles Rams as the NFC conference champion already, and thinking that it's theirs to lose, and even probably that they're thinking it's their Super Bowl to lose as well. So Nick, what are some of the things that you're really excited to see coming out of the NFC West this year?
Of course, I'm looking forward to seeing the Rams. I got to see the Rams and Seahawks play last year, and I was elated to watch that game. The 3 games that they played in felt like 3 of the highest leverage games of the entire year last year. All of them came down to 1 possession, if not like less than 3-point games. And I think that the Rams just elevated. Looking at the Rams adding Myles Garrett, and you're switching out Verse for Myles Garrett. Verse is really good, and the defensive line's really good. And then you add in the best defensive player on the planet. I feel completely comfortable with that. Obviously, as a Steelers fan, I rocked with TJ Watt over Myles Garrett for a number of years. TJ Watt has declined. Myles Garrett hasn't. And that I give Myles Garrett. Along with that, Myles Garrett's bigger. He's stronger than him. And he just put together an unbelievable pass rushing season on the Browns, who never led. And I think on the Rams, who will lead, you're going to see Myles Garrett maybe not have the sack numbers like last year because he set the sack record, but I think his pressure numbers and the ease of his ability to get pressure is going to be ridiculous this season. I think he's going to be in positions where it's like he could have a 80% pass rush win rate or something silly because it's like, oh, it's 3rd and long. Of course he's going to get pressure. Of course he's going to win because they can't throw it short. They can't beat him by throwing screens away or anything like that, because you're just going to lose yardage against this defense when you have such a strong defensive line. The secondary got jacked up this year, and they got a whole bunch of good dudes there as well from Kansas City. I think the defense is going to be a top 5 unit, and I think the offense is going to be a top 5 unit. Matt Stafford, worried about his age, but I think this is going to be 14 plus wins this season, guaranteed. I've got the Rams winning the division. I have the Seahawks finishing second. I don't have San Francisco making the playoffs this year. I'm worried about injuries. I'm actually very worried about Saleh leaving. I think that that's a really big concern for this defense, that it felt like Saleh elevated, and his ability to be a guru in that team is huge to me. And now Saleh's gone. He's head coach of the Titans. And their schedule is just going to be more difficult than last year. And last year they had an easy enough schedule where they were able to win 12 games. But I don't know that their injury luck's going to be any better. We're already worried about the injury luck for the players, and now you got people like Kyle Shanahan himself getting in car accidents. Like, I would just be worried that after this season, Kyle Shanahan's just so exhausted, so tired, that he needs to take a break from coaching for a second. Like, I think he loves it. I think he breathes it. But he's having to carry such a heavy load as a head coach right now.
For sure.
And I think that San Francisco is just a little overwhelmed with their struggles drafting and just being in a killer division with 2 Super Bowl level squads.
For sure. For sure. I think, and this is not my bold prediction, but I think there's a world where Myles Garrett breaks his own single season sack record this year. And the reason that I say that is because I think the Rams are just going to be ahead so often that teams are going to have to throw the ball, and he's just going to be able to pin his ears back and go. I mean, especially, I mean, if you can you imagine what it will, because I really think that this will happen, what it will look like once Aaron Donald comes back. Then you have to decide, are we going to put 2 guys, are we going to put a second guy to help our tackles on Myles Garrett, or a second guy to help our guards and our center on Aaron Donald. So it would not surprise me if Myles Garrett breaks his own sack record, because he was able to do that playing for Cleveland. Like, his talent was good enough to do that playing for Cleveland when Cleveland was down and teams were running against them in the second half because they didn't need to throw the ball. Now imagine when you're in a shootout type of game, you're down 10 points in the fourth quarter, and you have to throw and throw and throw and throw and throw against the Rams. And Myles Garrett will be able to soak that up really, really well, I think. I think this is finally the end of the line for San Francisco. It's been tough. I mean, again, we say, oh, it's finally the end of the line for San Francisco. They were in the Super Bowl 3 years ago. But at the same time, it feels like since then, somehow, like, they've been able to get into the playoffs. They keep aging. And honestly, they did not get younger this year. They got older. Like, I love Mike Evans. He's one of my favorite players. It was really sad that because of injuries, he wasn't able to maintain his 1,000-yard streak, last season. But he is old, and he's had injury concerns, especially last year. They signed Deebo Samuel, old, has had injury issues. Christian McCaffrey has been healthy for a couple years, which means, unfortunately, he's kind of due to have a really, really injured year. George Kittle has been hurt a lot lately. Trent Williams has been hurt a lot lately. Like, there's just a lot of guys on that offense that have been injured a lot lately, and they're not getting younger, and you look at the defense, and you mentioned Robert Saleh leaving, but also the defense that was so good the year that they went to the Super Bowl and lost in overtime to Kansas City, that offseason, 6 of their 11 starters on defense went away in free agency. And they've recouped a little bit and gotten some guys, but it's not the same. So I agree with you. I think this is kind of the end of the line for San Francisco. I don't think just 1 year of San Francisco not making the playoffs and maybe having like a 9-8 season will be enough for San Francisco to part ways with Kyle Shanahan. But like you said, I could see a world where it's just one of those similar to John Harbaugh leaving the Ravens and Mike Tomlin leaving the Steelers, that it's like, hey, you know what? We just we got to shake things up a little bit, and so we're gonna do that, and Shanahan goes. I also have the Rams winning this division. I think that similar to last year, though, we're gonna see a Rams Seahawks Sunday night football game in Week 18 to determine the division. Um, like I think that they both are in position to do that, and to have good enough years that we're looking at, two 14-win teams going, or 13-win teams going into that last game, that it really comes down to who wins this, similar to what we saw with the Lions and Vikings a couple years ago, which I think is just super duper fun and will be really, really cool. Um, Looking at these two teams again, there's just so many wins on their schedule. Like both of them, they have their bye weeks in week 11. I think the Rams will be 10-0 going into that. Like they go San Francisco and Australia to start, then they have the Giants. They go to Denver, to Philadelphia, at home versus Buffalo, at home versus Arizona, at Vegas, at home versus the Chargers, at Washington, at Arizona. And yeah, there are some really good teams in that. It's not like, oh man, these are, whatever. It's like it you look at this roster, it's like what else do you say? So I agree with you. I have the Rams winning this division. I have Seattle making the playoffs as well. Um, if Arizona wins more than 4 games, I think it would be a miracle. I think I don't have. It's not that I think that their new head coach is bad. I think that he'll probably be pretty good and be better than what they had. But I mean, you just look at the roster. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. is your top pass catcher, and he has sticks of butter for mitts. Like that's what we've seen, at least from these clips from training camp. You had the third overall pick. You used it on Jeremiah Love when you don't really have a strong offensive line, uh, to give him room. Trey McBride is probably the best tight end in the NFL right now, but what are you going to do at quarterback? My bold prediction for this division actually has to do with that question, so I'll get to that later. But um, yeah, I think that we're going to see the Rams. We're going to see Seattle. We might see a repeat of the NFC Championship game from last year as well. It's just it'll be in LA instead of Seattle. Would be my prediction there. Um, Nick, you said you have the Rams winning this division. Do you have Seattle in the playoffs as
I
well?
do. I do.
Yeah. Okay. What is your bold prediction for this division?
My bold predictions about the Cardinals as well, actually. So I think
Okay.
that we may go a similar path, but let me just pull up. I think that Carson Beck is going to have a better rookie season than the quarterback that beat him in the national championship in Fernando Mendoza.
Okay.
My reasoning, I like the weapons actually for Arizona. I think Jeremiah Love's a stud. I think Trey McBride's a stud. I like Michael Wilson a lot at receiver. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be able to raise his floor at some point, whether that's now or later. But I think that him as a co top wide receiver when you've got a bunch of other weapons is perfectly fine. And I think that he looked good. I really liked how Carson Beck looked in the preseason game. But I think Fernando Mendoza could be in a circumstance where the offensive line's such a disaster, the defense is such a disaster that whoa, it could be a mess. And I don't think the Cardinals aren't going to be a mess, but I think that the circumstances are going to align where the Raiders circumstance makes Fernando look worse than the Cardinals situation makes Beck look, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. Interesting. So, yeah, so my prediction is also related to Carson Beck. And I still haven't fully decided what that prediction is, because here's the deal. We look at quarterbacks that are not first round quarterbacks nowadays as either, oh, this guy's he's going to be the next Tom Brady, he's going to be the next Brock Purdy, or he literally never gets a chance.
Mhm.
And the question of which one it is really comes down to how smart the coaching staff and the organization is.
Mhm.
And so I'm struggling between two opposite ends of the spectrum. One is Carson Beck starts less than 5 games this year. And then Arizona's like, oh, we have a small sample size. We don't know what to do. Maybe we should draft a quarterback. I don't know. We got to give Carson Beck a fair shot. Or they are very smart, and it's like Carson Beck starts 12 plus games this year. I think I'm going to lean in the latter and go that Carson Beck starts 12 plus games this year. I think that, I if it were me and I'm a new head coach in an organization and Jacoby Brissett tries to pull the crap that he tried to pull this offseason, I'd be like, dude, you you are part of the reason that I am the new head coach. Like, I do not care. I do not care what you think you're entitled to. We're not doing this. Carson Beck looked good. I think we're going to go that direction. Yes, Gardner Minshew is there and in theory is ahead of him in the depth chart right now, but we know what Gardner Minshew is. That's the thing about both the guys that are ahead of him right now is we have a large enough sample size with those two guys as starting quarterbacks that we know what that's like. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that Carson Beck starts 12 plus games for Arizona this year. We get a large sample size of him. We really get to see what he's like, what he's about, how he handles things. And despite them not winning many games with him because there are just so many other issues on this roster, he is still he's still successful enough that then there's a question that needs to be asked about what goes on with quarterback moving forward.
Yep. I think that the Cardinals are set up to tank pretty well, but I think that there's another team that's set up to tank even better, even though I think the Cardinals want to. And I think that them being a dumb organization or a smart one, I think there is a proven organization that has shown that they like to tank. And so I will leave that for another day. But I think Arizona is going to be pretty messy, but put up some big offensive numbers. So I think Carson Beck will get at least some playing time, like you're saying.
All right. Let's move on to the NFC South. In the NFC South, last season, Carolina won this division with a record of 8-9. It was a weird sort of end of season circumstance because they played Tampa Bay twice in the last 3 games, I think, and so it was like, how's this all going to work out? They both ended with the same record, but Carolina got the nod. The NFC South for what feels like a really long time. The NFC South, since Drew Brees retired and since Matt Ryan left Atlanta, has been a really, really bad division as a whole. Now, granted, after that happened, you had Tom Brady come in, Tampa Bay wins the Super Bowl. But then also you take out, the Tom Brady's last season, include that in this lump. I mean, the last 4 years or so have been really, really bad. And I don't see that changing. So Nick, what are you thinking the NFC South is going to look like this year?
Yeah. I think the NFC South is going to be the messy middle that we talk about with last year's NFC South, where it was like, wow, none of these teams are good. And I also look at it this year and I go, wow, none of these teams are cellar dwellers. Like, I think that Arizona is clearly below a majority of these teams. I think that the Falcons have the most cellar potential, if that makes sense. Like, I think that there are some teams that the floor is just higher, and I think that the Falcons, the floor is lower because I think their quarterback situation is awful. Both of their quarterbacks are shorter and injury prone and having consistency issues, and their offensive line got weaker. Like, a lot of issues. That being said, I think the Panthers could be a little better than last year, even though they had some turnover luck. I think the Bucs are going to be better. I think that the Saints should be a little bit better too. I'm going with the Bucs though with this division. My bold prediction that I'll later states about the Bucs as well. I feel like the Saints are everybody's, this team's so underrated. This team's going to win the division. And I got beef with that because if everybody's saying the Saints are underrated, the Saints are going to win this division. The Saints aren't underrated. If everybody's saying they're underrated, they're not underrated. And if everybody's like, oh, they're a sleeper, they're going to win the division, not as much of a sleeper as you think. When a division's so weak that anyone could win it, you don't really have a legitimate sleeper in that division. If the Falcons win that division, it's going to be like, wow, I'm surprised. But it could be an everybody else implodes sort of situation, and nobody will be that shocked. The Falcons win that division, that sort of stuff happens. Tampa Bay wins it. It's like, oh, they have Baker. The offense is good. Saints win it. It's like, oh, everybody likes Tyler Shuck and Olave, and that's cool. Panthers, it's like, oh, well, they just won it, and Bryce is on the upswing a little bit. They add some consistency as far as the coaching staff. I'm going with Tampa Bay, though. They're the only team in this division that I predict making the playoffs. I'm just not as high on Tyler Shuck and the Saints. I think that they're good. He's good. But I don't think that the Saints have enough game changers to matter to me. And I think that they beat a lot of soda cans last year. Last year, let me just pull up the Saints teams that they beat at the end of last season, because it's like, wow, they ended up on a win streak. Last year, Saints won 1, 2, 3, 4 of their last 5 games. That's awesome. 4 out of your last 5 games, great. Who did they beat? They beat their last game. They lost to the Falcons, and that's how the jankiness happened with the Panthers winning the division. They beat the Titans and Cam Ward. It's like, oh man, you beat the Titans and Cam Ward. They were not good last year. They dominated the Jets. The Jets were awful last year. They beat the Panthers by a field goal. The Panthers were winning the division, but they beat the Buccaneers by 4 points. It's like, okay, that's a solid win. They lost to the Dolphins last year too, late in the season. It's like it was just a mixed bag, but their wins were pretty unimpressive to me. Beating Tampa Bay last season, when late in the season Tampa Bay was kind of falling apart, not a big deal to me. I like the additions that Tampa Bay had. They, to me, are a really good drafting team. Baker Mayfield, when he got injured last year, feels like he kind of fell off in a John Mateer-ish sort of way. I think that coming back, being healthy, offensive line's good, personnel's good, coaching's good. I think that the Bucs are going to be pretty good. I think that they could win 10 games maybe this year, and that for an NFC South winner is pretty good.
Okay. I see it very, very differently. Here's what I think. Here's my mindset with both the NFC and the AFC South divisions, which next time we're going to talk about the AFC. An average quarterback with a great roster around him can win a lot of football games. That's what we saw with Seattle last year.
Yes.
An average quarterback with not a good roster around him cannot win a lot of football games. Mm-hmm. A below average quarterback, no matter what the roster looks like, cannot win football games. And I feel like that's what we've seen in the past from quite a few teams, from even the, years that Cleveland, like recently, that Cleveland's like, oh man, with Jim Schwartz, their defense is just unbelievable, and they're still winning 6 games, right? Because quarterback is just such a mess. Outside of the year that they made the playoffs with Joe Flacco as their quarterback. Yeah. So thinking about that, when I look at the NFC South, I look at Atlanta. That yes, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. I mean that should be a really, really stellar offense. They have a pretty good offensive line. No matter what quarterback looks like this year, I don't think it will be good enough to win a lot of games.
Yeah.
With New Orleans, okay, Chris Olave, but I'm not sure that I'm a believer in Tyler Shuck yet.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at Tampa Bay, Emeka Egbuka, had a great start to the season, but then as more wide receivers got hurt and he had to be the number one guy, he really, really slowed down. Well, Mike Evans is now gone. Chris Godwin is kind of always just how we're going to get 10 games out of him. Which 10 games are we going to get? It sort of feels like as of late, right? So and Carolina, I think they've done good things with the roster. Bryce Young on his best day is an average quarterback. On his worst day, though, it doesn't matter, right? So, this division is just this is the, in my opinion, either the worst or the least experienced quarterback in the national division in the National Football League. And
Mhm.
so with that, you are going to have mediocrity or worse from all four of these teams. So, um, I have Carolina winning this division again
Okay.
because I think that there has been the most improvement with stability from this team.
Mhm.
Um, and so I do have them winning the division again. They're the only team out of this division that I have making the playoffs. I say that also saying that I think Atlanta is the only team that I would be surprised if they win this division unless we see a healthy Michael Penix look the way that he looked when he was at Washington. In which case it would be like, oh, okay, well, this is the reason why you drafted him. And yeah, Atlanta has won 10 games or whatever, right? What really hurts this division as a whole, they play the NFC North and the AFC North this year. Those are two divisions that, even though I don't think either of those are the top division in their conference, I think all of those all or almost all of those teams are better than all of these teams, right? Like I would take every team or almost every team in the NFC North more than over all four of these teams. Where there would
Mhm.
be overlap is where Minnesota sort of falls in the pecking order, but
Mhm.
Chicago, Detroit, Green Bay, without a question, are all above these teams. You look at the AFC North, Pittsburgh and Baltimore definitely. Cincinnati, I think so.
I agree. Yeah.
Cleveland, no. Cleveland
Yeah.
definitely not.
Cleveland's
But
worse than all of these teams, even the Falcons, I think, for sure.
right, right. So that said, I think that if any of these teams in those 8 games go better than 2-6, it would be like, wow, okay, right? So I think that even the best of these teams is going to have a record that looks really really bad. So again, I do have Carolina winning this division. I don't think that any of these teams make it as a wild card team.
No.
And yeah, that's the way I see this division. Nick,
Mhm.
what is your bold prediction out of the NFC South?
My bold prediction is that I think Baker Mayfield, quarterback for the Tampa Bay Bucks, gets paid 55 plus $1 million a year after next season. He's in a contract year, chip on his shoulder. Baker's the best Baker you can get. That's what you got when he was back at Texas Tech and Patrick Mahomes snatched his job. That's what you got when he was a walk on at Oklahoma, wins the Heisman. That's what you got when it was like, oh man, the Browns cut bait with him. He's on the Panthers. It's a disaster. He goes to the Rams, underdog. Nobody wants to pay him. He's on a prove it deal with Tampa Bay, plays awesome with Tampa Bay, gets paid, solid contract. I just think that this is a pretty darn good team he's on. And I think the quarterback market's exploded. And I think that if he hits the open market, he will for certain get 55 million. The only reason he wouldn't is if he stayed with Tampa Bay, maybe he only gets like 50. But I think certainly like if a Steelers or a I don't know. There are some other teams I think that would move off their quarterbacks who would definitely take him. But I think that he for certain after a good year would get over 50. I think over 55 million this year. If they win a playoff game, if they win the division, I think that Tampa Bay is going to have to pay him and I think you got to pay him like one of the top flight quarterbacks in the league and that's 55 plus million. So that's what I think is going to happen because I think he's going to play well.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Here's why I disagree with you. The reason why the reason why I disagree with you is because of the year that this is happening. This is happening in what appears to be such a quarterback rich draft class. And so
Mhm.
I think that there are a lot of teams that would otherwise then, yes, be in the Baker Mayfield, will pay him as a free agent sweepstakes. That it's like, okay, we pay Baker Mayfield $55 million,
Mhm.
or we draft Josh Hoover, in the second round, or even better than that. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks coming out: John Mateer, Dante Moore, Sam Levitt will be
Jake
coming
Carr.
out. CJ Carr, maybe Julian Sayin comes out this year. TBD there, right? So that that's where Gunnar Stockton. That's where I have
Arch
hesitancy
Manning.
because, right, that's where I have hesitancy because I think that he would want that, and I do think that he would deserve it, but I don't think teams would want to do it because they're like, No, because once you pay a quarterback that type of money, it's really really hard to be competitive still because of how much money then you have in that position.
Mhm.
Um, that said, I think that he would have suitors lining up all around the block to give him a Sam Darnold level contract after
Mhm.
this year. I
Mhm.
think he deserves more. I think he would want more.
Mhm.
I don't know. He's also such a polarizing character. You know, like you look at the teams and
Mhm.
it's like, okay, would you want to do this? And it's like, I don't know. You know, like so I think it could absolutely happen. I just think it's actually going to be interesting and far more complicated than just he has a good year, he gets money. Is
Mhm.
sort of my thought about it.
Mhm.
My prediction coming out of this division, I already said that Carolina I think is going to win this division.
Mhm.
I think Carolina is going to win this division with a worse record than they won it last year. So they won the division at 8-9. I think they're going to go win 7 games and win this division.
Ooh, you think this division's gonna suck? You think this division's worse than the NFC least when Washington won it in 2020? They
I
won 7-9 and won the division. You think a 7-10 team's gonna win?
I think so. I
Wow.
the NFC North and the AFC North. Like that that I
Yep.
mean that right there genuinely. I think for 2 out of these 4 teams, that is 1-7 in those 8 games. Genuinely. And so then you're looking in the other 10 games or in the other 9 games winning 7 of them potentially to get to 8-9. Like that's a tall task. That is
Yeah.
a tall task. I mean Carolina has to play Chicago and Seattle. Like,
Mhm.
chalk both of those up as losses too. We're already at 9 losses, like then there's probably 2 division games because all of these teams are around the same level, right? So like when you start looking at it like that, it's like, I mean, where are the wins coming? So
Yeah.
again, I mean that would be crazy. That would be
It will be
crazy.
crazy. That's
That would
that's
be
bold.
and again, with the way I have it lined up, then Seattle will come to Carolina and probably beat them by 35 points, and then we'll start the conversation. Should we get rid of division winners being conference champion
Yep.
or being
We always
playoff
do.
play
Post
automatic
playoff
playoff
games.
qualifiers? And it's like, no, we shouldn't. That would be ridiculous and stupid. Like look at the NBA. Some people don't even know that in the NBA there are divisions because it's like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's just be the top, anyway.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, I think Carolina at 7-10 is going to win the division this year.
That's crazy. I love it. I love it. It's super bold. So, can you go through your 1 through 7 seeds for the NFC? Do you have them seeded?
I do.
Okay.
I have Los Angeles at 1,
Hmm.
Detroit at 2,
Hmm.
Dallas at 3, Carolina at 4. Then wild cards, Seattle would go to Carolina as the 5,
Hmm.
Green Bay would go to Dallas as the 6, and actually I have San Francisco barely getting in and going to Detroit as the 7.
Oh, okay. Got you. Cool. For me, I'll just go through mine too. I
Yeah,
got the Rams at 1 as well. I have the Bears at 2. So you have the Lions. I think you said it too. So
yeah.
we have NFC North teams flipped. I have the Cowboys at 3 as well. I got the NFC South champion at 4 in the Bucks, who I'm picking. Seahawks at 5 feels like an easy 5 if I'm honest.
For
Lions
sure.
I have at 6. You have the Packers at 6. So same sort of thing. NFC North slots. Then I have the Eagles at 7. I just think that them being a disaster, they still probably win more games than San Francisco being a disaster. I think both teams could be disasters, but like, is it the coaching of San Francisco or the talent and general managing of the Eagles that carries the day? I'm going with the general managing. You're going with the coaching. I don't think either of us will blame each other for flip flopping there. But
No. All right. So that is interesting. So we both have the Rams. We both have Seattle at 5. We
mhm.
then both go, NFC North champion, NFC East champion, or NFC North champion. Then we both have Dallas.
Yes,
Then we do second place in the NFC North as the 6. And
yep,
then, that Philadelphia, San Francisco. That you could say former NFC champion that is definitely on the fall in
yeah,
that last spot.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Okay, well, that is interesting. Well, next week, everybody, we're going to be doing the same thing, going through the AFC division by division, pointing out our winners and stuff like that, going through bold prediction for each division. The AFC to me is very, very interesting, and I'll just leave it at that. We'll talk about it next week. But thank you all so much for watching. Let us know who you have making the playoffs coming out of the NFC, your bold predictions for the different NFC divisions, and anything else that you want to share, how you feel like we did, what did we say about your team, do you agree, disagree, all of that jazz. But thank you all so much for watching and for supporting us, and we will see you next time. Have a good one, everybody.
Sweet.